My watch, so please rise. Nick, would you say prayer, please?
My Father, we come to you tonight seeking your guidance and your will for our lives. And whatever we say and do tonight, Father, let it bring glory and honor to you. Grant the wisdom that's needed, Father, to deal with the issues at hand. We thank you and we exalt you, for you're worthy. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you have not already done so, please sign in. Council, you have in front of you the minutes. Please review them for a few minutes. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll make a motion to accept.
Motion made by Daniel. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Steve. Any questions? All those in favor? Motion carried. Okay. Moving on to the financial report.
Two different versions in front of you. Something different to help save on paper. It looks like this. It just starts out and shows your beginning balance, your receipts, disbursements, and your ending balance. We normally do them on a monthly basis. If you look at what we currently have today, it is $5,177,000 in the general fund. And obviously that has changed. It's down to $5,065,000 just because we've had a payroll and claim cycle. So try to give you both. We're at the beginning of the year, so there's not a whole lot to tell you other than we're just settling in and we need to keep an eye on balances.
Mm-hmm.
Sheila, on the election registration, we see it's in a negative.
What fund are we in?
It's election registration fund 1215. Is that just an oversight, or we need to address that?
There are encumbrances pending, is that, I believe that there was an encumbrance. So that should zero out. And then there's, isn't that also the fund that you had in your position there too? Is that a works fund? I will have to work and see.
Thank you.
I do know there's encumbrances that haven't all been done, so I hope that that's part of it. We should have end of year payments coming.
And Polly,
Yes.
maybe this would be the better place to talk about the
Yeah, I think-
legislation, since we're talking money. There is currently a variety of bills in the Indiana legislature right now that can have some varying degree of impact on local units of government. And that would include us, it would include townships, the towns of Spencer and Gosport, the school, and the library. And the biggie is called Senate Bill Number 1. And a few of us had attended the AIC's legislative conference where we were briefed on this. I actually testified at the hearing for that bill. And essentially what it is the governor's property tax reform bill. It's carrying a lot of what he had spoken about throughout the campaign. And I'll say there's nothing particularly wrong about property tax reform. There's some good things with that. But as currently drafted, Senate Bill 1 does not have any mechanism in it for local units of government to make up the lost revenue. For Owen County, our loss would be $600,000 in year 1. So 26 budget year, which we'll be talking about later this year, potentially, again, if this bill passes without amendments and things, potentially could create a deficit, if you will, in our budgeting capacity. And that would affect everything. I mean, everything in our system would be impacted by that. So I would encourage members and our department heads to reach out to their senators and House members to talk about the bill and some of the concerns we have there. And hopefully there'll be some changes or improvements with that over time. But we need to be mindful of that, because if we're faced with a decision to cut, there's no way around cutting services. There's just no way around that. And that can be detrimental, of course, and painful, but there's not a darn thing we can do about that. There's also some other bills involving income tax and some other components that may fit all together at some point later in the process, so there may be some opportunity, but there's nothing formal yet. But just keep that in the back of your mind about our finances, and at the moment, I think it'd probably be wise to just kind of sit tight for the moment and watch and see how things play out. I would really hate to see us commit to any significant increases in things in the coming months until we do know how this is going to come out. We don't want to overextend ourselves and then a few months later have to fall back or reverse something that we did. So
Yeah, and I've talked to Bob Heaton and Senator Bray about this, and Senator Bray has said that it's kind of ongoing. There'll be changes made, so we just need to keep up on it. There is I believe, Marcy, there's a legislative breakfast coming up. Is that?
On Saturday.
Yeah. So I think it's good to stay involved and to stay informed, and the legislative conference was very informative, and I was glad I went because, there's a lot going on. So we just need to keep abreast of that so we can kind of figure out how to move forward.
That's also the trustee bill, SB1, that have the trustees in it.
that's a separate legislation.
Yeah.
That will likely not materialize from what we're seeing.
You've got one of these in your packets. It's got all of
Yeah.
the different bills that are up for vote, so. But, all right, any more about financial reports?
We also had copies of claims. I had said I was going to start putting the claims as they come in
Yes,
every 2
yes,
weeks to the
yes.
commissioners meeting in your packets, so you can kind of keep up with departments and expenses. At any point you decide you don't want them, let me know. Trying to start with print front and back, save paper, and send them somewhere, but
All right, anything else? All right, moving on to old business, jail project update. Jeff Peters was at the last commissioners meeting, and Joe and I were both there. It was kind of an eye-opener. You've got in your well, Joe printed out for you what he gave the commissioners, and it kind of breaks down what we're looking at. So, you got it, girl? You should have one. They're talking about, yeah. The construction cost estimate at $24,843,280, but that contains no soft costs, contingency, utility extension, or cost of bond issues. They're estimating the soft costs at $5 million, the utility extension $1 million, and cost of bond issuance is $525,000. So this equals about a project cost of $31.4 million. So there's a lot to, I would like to see, and Brian, you can jump in here anytime you want. I'd like to see a meeting where council, commissioners, Elevatus, all of the different players, I mean, somebody from the town, just to be all in the same room and around the same table to kind of discuss this and see what we need to do to go forward.
Did Dan provide a list of what they used to estimate the soft cost in any way?
Dan, I don't think, well, Jeff Peters was the one that gave us this, and I'm not sure that there was actually a list of, I mean, it just says per Dan Zerner. You got the copy of that, didn't you? So I don't know exactly what that entailed.
'Cause I have not spoken with Dan Zerner about anything with any of this. I don't think the sheriff has either. He has not reached out to us about that, so.
Yeah.
That was news with the commissioners.
I'm thinking that Jeff and Dan probably had that discussion themselves, so.
I would like to see us speak to Elevatus and see what their thoughts are and what other projects that are similar cost were. We know that Lawrence County, Missouri has a similar bill. The footprint's relatively the same. Find out what all of their total cost was to include the soft costs, since it's relatively new. Carroll County's building that same jail right now.
Okay.
I'd like to know what their out-the-door cost is, because this seems to be more elevated than what we were being told.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that was kind of a surprise to me.
I will add, and I've said this before in previous meetings, that we can add 6% construction costs per year additional to this. And if we have a year like 2022 where we had a 14%, this won't get cheaper.
I
It's
know.
only gonna get more expensive.
I think we've seen that over the last 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm between 60 and 65 inmates right now per day. My total maximum bed count is 72, and that means everything is full and I have nowhere to classify. I am required classification. I have to classify my inmates. I have 2 murderers and 2 attempted murderers. I can't put them with anybody else. That's only 4 inmates. They can't be with anybody else. So it's tying my hands.
Yeah, and
I have such limited ability right now to classify under the DOC standards.
Yeah, I just feel like I would like to get all of the players, well, I'm with you, I'd like to, talk to Elevatus too. And at some point, I would like to get all of the players in the same room and.
And there are other construction companies. I know we keep talking to Garmont. There are other companies out there, and I gave Gary Burton a list of different contractors that was provided to me by Elevatus. I don't care which one it is, it's irrelevant to me who builds the thing. But if someone's willing to build it cheaper, and it's not gonna jack the cost up anymore, then we need to
Right.
approach that and not stick to one company.
I
because
agree.
That's who we like that guy or that guy. I mean,
And I don't know if somebody asked him to show up at he wasn't at the commissioners meeting, was he, or what? He wasn't. I don't
Grandma?
think. Yeah, Dan
I'm
Zerner.
not certain. I don't think so.
Um,
But, I mean, typically, we try to get 3 quotes on everything, right? So you'd think a large project of 20-some million, we would get 3 quotes.
There's about 6 different construction companies that build jails in Indiana, or at least in the surrounding area, the surrounding states. And I gave Gary that list. I have that. I can still pull that up.
Why don't you
and
get-
we can look at, but if they shoot us a cheaper bid,
Yeah.
that would make sense.
Right.
Yeah, because right now it's looking at, if we went to 20-year amortization, like, and that's with the soft costs that they spoke of, it's an additional $710,000 a year that we'd have to find.
And I'm curious of their soft costs.
Yeah, I
I'm curious
know.
what
I thought
is.
that seemed awfully
I
high.
mean, are they talking about, are they putting in a body scanner when I haven't requested a body scanner? I mean, stuff like that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're putting.
They call it an estimated to be based upon not having that information. Because it could be this much if you're asking for that. And then there's also fixtures and desk and, everything you can think of.
Change orders are super common with big projects like that.
They're also extremely expensive.
Yes,
You want to
and-
avoid change orders
and
at
they-
all costs.
But when they come, they hold you to the fire, so. Yeah, a meeting like that, like you said, where you get the council and the commissioners and y'all in there, would be
I can
great.
forward that
Quick.
to Wally and one
Yeah.
of those other contractors.
Yeah, because I think the other 2 commissioners need to see that.
And it can't hurt to at least put feelers out. see
Yeah.
what they say.
I think that's a good idea. I mean, it makes sense.
Our, as far as just simple math, if you financed 17 million, mind you, remember there's a down payment here, so there's another 3 to 4 that we would have by the time we need it. So you're looking at a project of 21 million max, if you're looking at the interest rate that's been recently shared, 4.25. And if you look at using the 17-year payback, just going with how many years are left in our jail lit, that's a $1.4 million payment per year, which is totally doable. That's our target, I would think is reasonable. But that's a $21 million limited. project.
Are you
Considering too that, my $3.5 million budget comes out of the public safety tax. Public safety tax was taken to help with this project. Over this 17-year period, are we still gonna be using the public safety tax for my budget, or will it go back to the general fund, freeing up that money that was intended for this jail project to begin with?
Well, it
We
wasn't
started-
necessarily intended for all that money to go towards that, but there is no
But
other way to cover the sheriff's department's operations. There's no other money.
at the end of the life of that tax, I mean,
The jail lit,
yeah.
well, then the tax rate goes away.
But what I mean, and then his budget would have to go to back in.
Well, the public safety would stay in place.
Yeah.
That doesn't change. It's the jail lit that would go away at 17 years. So, but yes, Ryan, that would be phenomenal,
Because,
but you got to have somewhere to pay for that.
Right. I'm
And there
just
isn't,
thinking that Prior
so.
to the public safety tax, the budget was paid out of the general fund to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It wasn't out of the public safety tax. That wasn't generated until 5 years ago.
Mm,
So at some point, it was coming out of the general fund.
right, and that was pre-financial challenges of 4 years ago, and that was pre-inflation, and that was pre-raises for everybody, and, I mean, there's a lot of expenses that ended up being incurred, and it's all spoken for. So, there just isn't any other money to get from somewhere else. But back to the total for the project, your easy math, you're looking at about a $21 million limit.
After the down payment.
That includes the down payment in that 21 of 3 to 4 million that we have saved up. So you'd be financing about 17. So the lower you can get the interest rate, which may happen over the next year or so, the lower the cost of the project, the more down payment you put in, That all can have an effect on what you can do with this project. But we have a limited range here. There isn't a lot more to that. Now, you can go to a 20-year, but you have no guarantee in place to cover those final 3 years. Now, you could refinance, as they talked about in our previous meeting, and odds are that can be done, and you can shave those off. But up front, you still have to be able to commit from a financial standpoint. If you've got folks that are providing a bond or financing, you have to commit the assets, you have to commit the funding sources. So I'm using 17 just as a very conservative timeline, since that matches up with that tax. But there could be some wiggle room depending on how you pledge things and what you're going to do with refinancing. Plus, if you're going to get rid of that property that the current jail's on and return that back in to a private ownership, then whatever you raise from that sale could then pay down the debt or be used. So those are some of the components we spoke about.
Well, and there's also several other properties that the county owns that are just sitting there. There's around 95 acres on 43 that we're not using in the land swap. That's just been sitting there idle, that's not been utilized for anything, to my knowledge. And then we have several other properties too, so.
Correct me if I'm wrong, we have the ability to, Anton, if we, instead of financing the full 21 million out of 17 years through like a USDA where it's 4.25, we have the ability to loan against the courthouse, say 7 or 8 million interest free, 20 to 30 years, and that would drop our overall, what we owe on our interest significantly, because what you have pulled up there, we're gonna owe
Yeah.
6 million in interest.
Yeah, it depends on how the courthouse, that part works, but yes, that would be money to the good, because if you have zero interest on that chunk,
Yeah.
that saves you back the worst part of this is the amount of interest you're paying. If we had the cash, we could just do it, but you have to pay the bank back or the financer. And so if you can cut that back by using the courthouse or doing part of it through one program, part of it through another, that'd be fantastic.
I think the interest you would save just off of, a $7 or $8 million loan would almost fill that gap of your 500 to 700,000 a year.
Yeah, because if let's say the total interest here would be 6.9 million, so remember that number. But if we just do a $10 million financing, because 7 of it is backed by the courthouse and has a 0, then it's 4 million in interest. You save $3 million that you could have in the project. You could do a 3 million bigger project. You could do a $24 million instead of a 21. So there's a big difference depending on how you handle that financing. So very much on the table, what you're bringing up, so.
And what about selling, I don't know what the storage units are worth, and I know the sheriff's office is in there, but I don't know what that's worth now. And if we, versus the annual income versus selling it outright, and then any other of the property that's not being used, not collecting taxpayer money, that is more money down, buy down the rate, whatever it takes, but yeah.
It'd be on the back end.
Well, not even the storage units, though, I'm almost wondering if they couldn't be gone prior, other than their office. And maybe if they're
Like sell it up
sold,
front.
we could sell it up front and then lease back the offices, or say, we'll sell it to you at this, but we get the offices for X amount of years, rent-free. If we go over that, then here's what the rent is. But I honestly don't know what the storage units
That's
are
an
worth.
interesting idea.
But that's money. The 95 acres, that's money. And that either allows us to put more forward and either buy down the rate or get the interest down. Because like I said, $7 million of interest is a lot of money.
That's what makes me sick. Interest.
Can we just start a
It does
bank?
nothing to the building. It's zero benefit to the actual need.
Here's a wild part to it. Say you don't sell the storage units, because those storage units aren't worth any more than $600,000 to $800,000. But it generates how much a year in
No.
revenue?
52,000.
It's not a big revenue.
Yeah.
So then honestly, you probably won't get anybody to pay more than $500,000 for it anyway. But over the span of that loan, you're gonna be money ahead by not selling it and just keeping the revenue off of it.
52,000.
Well, that's what I
And
said,
then-
I mean, you'd have to look at it, I don't know what they're worth.
And then the ground where the jail's at, you know, they're not,
Yeah.
and here's just devil's advocate, they're not making any more ground, especially here in town. From properties that are similar in town, I don't personally feel like that would sell for more than $1 million to $1.5 million. But we're always running out of room for the county on our stuff, like administrative buildings, things like that. You know, a potential thing could be you tear that jail down and build an administrative building for what you don't have in the courthouse.
If you were to take that, let's say $500,000, just for conversation, of the storage unit part, and you freed up that $500,000 and applied that to the project, the interest saved, it's worth about $200,000 in interest. You know, just to give you an idea of,
Well, if it's in the bank interest, we're getting off of that.
so, and I think that would probably be far more valuable over that, the term of the loan, than having the additional 52 in revenue that goes towards the payment.
Well, we're paying somebody to manage it.
Right, the costs, right.
Whatever it is, it's minimal, but,
Right.
and we have to insure it. Grade it
And-
when it snows.
Yeah, you're right, and I like the lease idea, so that until the project's complete on the jail, they still need that office space, so they could still, depending on the arrangement that's made, they could still occupy and continue till that part's done, and then those folks get that space back, or however that would work in the deal. But that's not a bad idea. Again, every one of these, I mean, there's not a bad idea on this project. We've got to, these things have to be lined up, because you can see how it affects what we can
We
do.
can rent the chairs out in here every week,
Yeah.
whatever it takes.
Bake sale.
At the last commissioners meeting, the coroner's office brought up their needs for bigger building or adequate building or whatever. It was brought up that the old EMS building that the sheriff's office currently has as administrative would suit their needs. Certainly, if you were to sell that property, whoever bought it would not want a coroner's office at their entrance of business. So there's another aspect of it.
Anyway, lots to think about, and
So yeah,
Oh,
the communication is
yeah.
key here, right?
Dave,
I had a gentleman come up to me the last commissioners meeting, and he said, we might want to look into, when we get that loan, paying every day on it, have a bank account set up where it pays every day to eat that interest down. And he said over, 20, 30 years, however long it is we go, that would really eat away at that interest quickly. Because I mean, like you said, we're paying millions of dollars in it for nothing.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Dave. Now, I used a monthly payment option, and that was 6.9 million. If you did every 2 weeks, just to show you an example, then you save about $100,000 total in that project. And if you did every day, you could save, it doesn't save a huge amount when you get into that, because it's already monthly on that. But sometimes quarterly, annual, you don't get a good deal with that. Yeah. But yeah, you can do all those figures. If there's a way to do it, pay it more often, that's to your advantage, as the payer, no doubt.
I just don't want to see Owen County left, because none of us sitting here are going to be here 20 or 30 years, I want to leave it for them to deal with and try to get it paid off as soon as possible.
Yeah.
that's always the goal anyway, so.
When he says sitting here, he means that these seats not gone.
Man, okay. That's a relief, yes.
All right, Well, if we've got no more about that, then we'll move on to the radio project. And there is Chris, there's a radio project meeting on Thursday, is that correct?
Yeah, we'll be
At
having a
one.
meeting with the vendor on Thursday. So, I don't want my- So, the vendor's been given notice to proceed. So he should be ordering some parts and get those ordered. I've been trying to get some information on subscriber units. When I talk about subscriber units, it's the radios that actually talk to this system. It looks like we are, we'd budgeted in the project $150,000, but we had also talked about just doing a little bit, 6, 8, 10 radios per fire department. So I reached out just to find out what the need was for each fire department, and we're looking at around probably a little bit over $300,000 to be able to supply the needs of every fire department as far as radios that would be capable of getting on this program or on this system. That doesn't mean I'm coming back to you for another $150,000. I asked the commissioners for permission to look for grant funding to come up with this extra money, and they gave me permission, and now I think I need to get permission from you guys to go ahead and proceed and try to get some grant funding to help out on the project.
I think that's an excellent idea.
So I think we can come up with some. I don't know if we can come up with all of it, but the more we come up with, the more we can help the fire departments.
I know the sheriff's department said before, I think it was Matt said something about having 2 radios in the vehicles where then they would only have one. Could some of those radios be used as trade-ins or anything like that? or part of it?
Yeah, I've been looking at trade-ins and stuff. He will only, this vendor will only take 1 radio per radio. So if we buy a radio, we can only trade 1 radio in. So, but we are considering and figuring all that in and trying to fix that, to fix part of the problem that way also. We do have a meeting with the vendor on Thursday, and it's just to talk about some numbers and such, and so it's about all that's happened.
So do we need a motion?
I make a motion that we grant Chris the rights to go ahead and proceed with, you're wanting to try to get a grant?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Motion made by Nick, seconded by Daniel. Any questions? All those in favor? Motion carried.
All right, thank you.
Do you want to stay there for a minute?
Well, I was going to wait till
Well,
comments, but
well, that's up to you.
no, I'm ready. That means I can leave, doesn't it?
Yeah. Chris has requested to be put on the agenda well, you explain it.
We've had an opportunity that we haven't had for a long time, to bring another paramedic on board. And so what I'd like to do is vacate an EMS or an EMT position, change that position to a paramedic position. There would be cost associated with it, but I think I'll be able to handle that okay. The way we're set up now is an EMT on every ambulance shift and a paramedic on every ambulance shift. I had the opportunity to grab one of my part-timers that just got through class and bring her on board full-time. She's interested in full-time, so rather than see her go somewhere else, we put time into training her and everything while she was a part-timer. Rather than see her go somewhere else, I'd like to vacate an EMT position and change it over to a paramedic position. So,
Do we want to first make a motion to add him to the agenda, or do you want to, what's after? bodies.
Sorry, I got ahead of things, I
No,
guess.
no, I let you,
I
I mean,
made a
I encouraged it, so
Since he
that's my
was not
fault.
on the agenda for tonight, is
Not
that what you're
officially.
saying? That we take a vote to deal with this issue this evening? I make that motion.
Motion made by Nick, second by Daniel. All those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, now,
I make a motion, you say you can finance it? I make a motion that we allow Chris to go ahead and trade out his EMT for a paramedic,
Yeah.
and you have the finances to make that happen? Okay.
I'll second that.
motion made by Nick, seconded by Anton.
So the cost, just for the record, is gonna be about $8,000 a year. That's the difference in the pay between an EMT and a paramedic, plus the FICA and the PERF. There's gonna be a nominal difference in overtime, just because of the higher rate, but it's a percentage and it's fairly limited. And there's no benefits cost change, because it's still a full-time position.
Yeah.
So you'd be vacating one of your vacant, right now I've got 2 vacant EMT positions, right? So we'd be vacating one of them and then adding a paramedic in its place. Fairly
Yep.
simple.
Okay.
Does that leave it fully staffed?
That leaves me with half a shift. We went to our supervisors, they were working a firefighter schedule, which is 1 day on and 2 days off. That leaves me with, I put them on 2 days a week like everyone else. And at the time, it saved me some overtime, but it's kind of caught up with us now. But anyway, that leaves me with a half a shift, is what that leaves me
Who
with.
covers that half shift?
Normally part-timers. We'll bump a paramedic off of an ambulance up into that supervisor's shift for that day, and then we backfill it with an EMT part-time.
Any other questions for Chris? All right, call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion carried.
Thank you.
All right, department liaison appointments. You included that in the packet, right, for 2024? We can either have you guys decide now, or we can take a month and you guys can think about what departments you want to be liaisons to, and we can vote in, or sign up in March, whatever you guys, what's the mind of the council?
I think we could postpone until our next meeting.
Okay. So take these home, decide who you would be interested in being a liaison for, and then come back ready to sign up in March. All right, on to commissioner review requests. Sheila.
You have in front of you job descriptions for a building administrator, planning and zoning director combination, and also a mapping position. Commissioner meeting last week, we had Suzanne had resigned from her position. Commissioners voted to separate duties out of there. Right now, the mapping is set to come back to the auditor's office, and we're also temporarily handling the storage units until they decide further. Therefore, again, you have in front of you a job description for the building administrator and planning and zoning director.
Well, I was just wondering, what extra would that cost us to change it around like that? Have you figured that out?
Yes, we have. There will be zero cost for the mapping part, because we already approved a full-time position for the auditor's office this year. That's not been filled. And what would happen is that would be retooled, instead of just a generic deputy auditor type position, it would become a deputy auditor mapping GIS, as had been in place several years ago. The cost would be identical, because it's the same rate of pay as what was originally approved, and we already approved the benefits cost as well. So from a mapping deputy auditor standpoint, we would just simply need to modify that position from deputy auditor to deputy auditor mapper type of role. There's an old job description in your packet which needs some work. We still need to put it into the new format. It still needs to be rewritten. But I think Sheila's got a pretty good idea of what that needs to be. She's going to incorporate some regular deputy auditor language into that from existing job descriptions. And then she's going to add in the specifics relating to mapping to finish that. But it would remain a COMET job category classification. It would remain a 35-hour-a-week position. It would remain under her department. So a lot of it doesn't change. It's just the name of the position and the job description for it. That's the easy part. Does that answer your question?
Well, I mean, the way they're swapping around, it won't cost us any more as far as payroll.
No.
Okay.
No, it will not. Now, the other part is also not going to cost. It may actually save us some money. Whatever's left in the building and planning department, Dave, jump in if you have anything to add to this. Since we're removing some of the mapping GIS there, and the storage unit stuff is gone or is going to be taken away, then there needs to be a retooling of that job description, which you also have in your packet. And I assume that this version did take that stuff out?
Yes.
Okay. So whatever's left is whatever you want to reevaluate this position at. It would remain professional and in its normal classification as well. It already has benefits as well. There's no cost there. But where the savings comes into play is we had originally added to the pay of that position when the storage unit function was added on. That should really be backed out, in my opinion, because if we're not going to be doing that anymore, we don't need to be paying for that, if that makes sense. So I would suggest considering at least a $2 reduction in the rate for now, and then that would save the building and planning budget some money, which I think they're trying to do. So
Wasn't that money coming from somewhere else, another fund? Didn't they have an extra, like $5,000, $7,000 over in another account that was paying?
The
that was
coroner's
Surveyor.
perpetuation fund and the surveyor.
Yes, so it was already over in another one, so we're just eliminating that or moving it around anyway. So I don't think that
part,
changes
I
the
think that would
salary.
still stay in place. Is that
Yes.
correct, that
We
arrangement?
still need that, even with the $2 an hour cut. I mean, it'll absorb some of it and lessen it, but it would, and then you're losing, we're getting ahead on the agenda. So you'll be losing the storage unit costs that are in there. Those were saved for this year to fund that, but then starting next year, you would have to absorb those costs. So it might balance out a little bit in the surveyor's corner fund, but it still would be less than what it currently is, no matter which two funds it's paid from.
Yeah, and then the storage units, so I stand a little corrected on the planning and building department because there is 20% of the compensation had been coming out of the storage unit fund.
That was for your
20?
enforcement officer.
Well, this was just the appointed pay position. There was part-time was separate, and that was going to be for the code enforcement, right?
There was the part-time in hers. I
Right.
left, there was 171,000 at the last meeting, and those are the numbers I didn't go by. That was what was in the storage unit. You have an ordinance in front of you tonight to sign. There was $152,000 that is going into the new jail fund. We left the difference of that 171 minus the 152 in there. Those were the costs to cover out of the storage unit for the rest of
For the
this year.
rest of the year.
Yes.
So the question is if we do reduce the rate, it's not gonna help building and planning out, but it will reduce, it won't cost us anything.
Right.
But it will reduce what's taken out of there. The concern is that if that's 9,800 or whatever that is, we're only taking $2 off the rate. That's not $9,800. That's not enough. So,
4,160.
yeah.
So we were paying $10,000 just to manage the building, the storage units?
Well, we weren't necessarily paying that for that, but we were.
I'll take the job.
We
I'll
were,
take it.
yes, we were taking 20%, we were just figuring 20% of the total out of it. Now, that doesn't mean that they were
We were just
doing.
pulling that over because we needed more money.
Yeah, it just offset costs, so it's not necessarily matching up with the exact breakdown of the duties or the value the position brought from a storage standpoint only. But from a dollar standpoint and doing this redo, it does make a difference because we need to figure the math. If we're reducing the position's pay rate by $2, that's going to take away half of this. But what about the other half? Are we leaving it there, or are we gonna reduce it further? How are we gonna cover if
What
the
is the
storage
hourly
units are
rate?
gone? Let's see what that is here. The other thing I will say too is that part of that grand total we had budgeted for is based on the longevity that was tied to the individual in that position. So
Yeah.
we are gonna save about $4 an hour there. So it may work. If you got 4 there and then 2 off for the base pay, that's $6 to $7.
But we need to get somebody in the door as well.
Right.
So that may be the harder part than any of it.
Yeah, and to answer your question, Steve, if we were looking at a brand-new hire, it would be 21.32 an hour. That's taking.
Building department.
Right, that's taking, this is the administrator for the building department. It would take away, right now, the base and the COLA is 23.32. If we take $2 off because of what we're talking about here, that's 21.32 an hour would be the starting pay for that position. So the council would need to decide, is that good? Does it need to be different? You know, what number do you want that at? We don't have any official review to go by or any classification other than reversing the last increase we gave it.
Yeah.
You see where I'm going with that? Now, we are in the middle of doing our update on these type of things, and we'll get a new job description and we'll get a new classification for it, but that's not gonna be till May, so.
We need that pretty quickly.
Yeah. So you could be, if you don't like the 21.32, you want to lower it further, you could do that and be at least a little conservative with it, and then see what the consultant ends up doing in a few months, and you can always raise it. It's tough to lower it is the
Right.
problem.
I agree.
Near impossible.
Yeah, there you go. So it's up to you on your comfort level with that. But I'd at least go to 21.32 though. I wouldn't go any higher than that.
And I make a motion that we set that base pay for that position at 21.32.
I second that.
Motion made by Nick, seconded by Steve. Are there any questions on that?
And then we'll adopt, will this be a part of your action as well as adopting the new job description for it? And
We can do a second motion.
Marcy's got a question.
Yes.
I just want to know, in the meantime, like today, I got a phone call from someone when they had a zoning question. So who do I need to send them to?
Sheila.
Sorry, Sheila.
She's added another hat.
There'll be a little bit extra on your check next week.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
are we adding that to the current motion?
Well, I mean,
Or are we making that a separate?
absolutely, do we need to back up? Or, just go ahead, I'll call for a vote, and I'll make a motion on that.
Okay. So this is the vote on the
Well, the only
2132?
trouble with it, how can you vote on it, you have a job description?
Well, we're gonna.
We'll do it this evening.
Yeah, we have the job description.
Oh, you got it?
Mhm.
Is that an updated version on that, Anton?
Yeah, whatever Sheila had provided, yeah.
It's the one I sent you guys earlier, and it was basically the same one, we just took out the GIS and mapping technical bits in it and added the job title as building administrator and planning and zoning director, so.
It's hard to, I mean, it's hard to get a number for that because we're not only backing out the storage unit, but we're backing out the mapping too. So,
Yeah, it's, it is unique because it is an administrative position. It's not just a regular office type thing. And it still has a combination of some stuff, but the only other choice is go lower. But the other thing too, I'll say, is if the consultant comes back and says, well, this should be $21.05, well, then obviously there's not going to be a raise for this position anyway.
Right.
So it'll settle out over
Yeah.
time. You just don't want it too high and be stuck. That's,
Yeah.
and I think taking the $2 off will help with that. So,
okay, I call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion carried.
and then,
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna make a motion that we accept this job description with the new pay
I'll
for
second that.
the building administrator, planning, zoning.
Motion made by Steve, seconded by Nick. Any questions concerning that?
and it's assumed that the commissioners have not voted on it yet, right? They'll have to adopt it because it's under their hiring.
The job description?
Correct. I mean, they should probably formally decide, yep, that's the job description we want, because it's your position that you're filling,
Right.
right?
I thought the council did the job description.
Well, the council does have the final step in approving the job description, but if it's something that's under a department like that, they would need to also know about it or be good with it. I'm sure you would be, but,
Yeah, we'll take care of it next meeting.
okay.
So we can't advertise it until after it goes to the commissioners, is that what you're saying?
No, I don't think so, because we would have the ultimate as far as the salary ordinance and all that. But I think the commissioners should, on the record, have something involving this job description, because it's a position that they normally fill. So I think that you need to finish that step on your end.
We'll take care of that next meeting.
All
Yeah.
right.
So,
Get it advertised, though. We'd still advertise it, correct, Sheila?
In the morning?
Yeah, I don't think the council objects to running with it.
You have a question, Joe?
you just cleared it up. I
Okay.
thought we were waiting another 2 weeks, which would make it actually a month.
Right, we don't want to do that. All right, all those in favor? Motion carried. Okay.
So back to the auditor. I think, can we get a better job description first? Can that wait until the next meeting? Let's get, if that's okay, let's get a clean job description. I do think it needs to be, deputy auditor needs to be in that job title in some capacity, but then mapper is the special function, kind of like we have tax and settlement deputy, payroll and HR deputy. This will be the mapping GIS deputy. But I think that if we get a clean job description for this, we can adopt that at the next meeting. Is
Okay.
that okay?
Yeah.
How soon do you want to fill that, or can you, or have you even started kind of thinking?
I can't advertise something I don't have.
Right, well, that's my question,
I
is
mean, I
timing.
would like to get it sooner than later. Sean Scott has offered to help you know, as far as like updates and things like that. But we don't currently have anybody that's assigning new addresses or stuff like that unless we can get a hold of him tomorrow and see if he'll help us there too. That's all we can do.
Do we want to maybe pre-approve with contingent on final adoption in March, but to let her, because the rate's not going to change, that part she can advertise. And if we approve the title, it can be advertised at least.
I think the sooner she can advertise, the better.
What do you think?
So mapping GIS/deputy is the official
Yeah, we can
title.
finalize the job description for March, but we can authorize her to proceed with advertisement and try to at least start the hiring process. So I'll make that motion, that we authorize the auditor to start the hiring process for the modified position to Deputy Auditor Mapper GIS, contingent on a final job description in March.
Motion's been made. Is there a second? Second by Daniel. Any questions?
I'd have one question.
Okay.
Fill me in, at what point do we keep adding job descriptions and adding positions and duties under the auditor, at what point do you change the auditor's job descriptions? Because which changes, it literally changes
Fair
every
question.
meeting.
Well, the mapping function by law is already something that can be under the auditor
And
anyway.
it used to be under the auditor.
And it used to be.
Before I came on, it was under
Right.
the auditor, and
It's,
the commissioners at that time moved it.
Yeah, so as far as legal duty, it's already a part of the auditor anyway. It just was taken away at one point. The commissioners at the time decided to place it under their authority, and which can also be done. Can go both ways, I
I
guess.
think we're lucky that we have Sheila, but at some
Oh, yeah.
point in the private sector, they'd be asking for a raise with the job description changing everything.
Yeah, well, she did get a new position, so
I was gonna say, yeah, I
she gets a new position out of it instead of absorbing it in her existing capacity.
That's all.
Right.
Yeah.
All those in favor? Motion carried. Okay, let's see. HR, you want to say a little bit about, having a meeting, is that correct?
Last I checked, it was Friday at 9 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
right here.
So, and that's just kind of, it's not really a meeting, it is a,
We're not gonna vote on anything, it's more of an administration meeting.
right.
Well, we're trying to figure out what this company can do, so they're bringing in men basically to tell us what they do, what they won't do, because I don't know HR, so, we're going to meeting, but we say, what can you do for us?
Mhm.
So nothing would be voted on, we're just trying to figure out what they can do and can't do.
Anybody any questions on that?
What time was that? What time was that, Dave?
9 o'clock Friday morning.
And that, right here?
That's the last I heard.
Thank you.
And that's a firm? I know you guys, we talked about hiring an individual, and the only problem I have with that is who hires the hirers?
Yeah.
We don't know what we don't know. And if we had to hire a firm to hire an individual, I actually think I'd understand that more than us hiring an individual. I know it may seem like a waste of money, but we get stuck with somebody that doesn't really, we don't know that they don't know what they're doing, then we're stuck.
Well, I think what he's bringing in this firm that he knows, the lawyer, he knows that they do HR and such, so they're bringing them down here to talk to us of what they can and can't do. And it's my understanding, and I'd rather see a person coming out of there, coming to here, but that's just me. Some people want to hire, but I'd rather have somebody that knows it like the back of their hand, that way if we got an issue, it doesn't drag on.
Yeah, and I like the idea of hiring a firm, especially in the beginning.
Well, that's
I do
me,
too.
And be-
I'm only one.
Yeah, because if we don't like the firm or it's not working out, we can get rid of them, we get
Right.
another firm. If we hire somebody, we don't like it,
Right.
then we've got to go through the process of removing them and fire them, so.
Yeah, I
And,
agree.
And I personally don't like anything longer than a one-year contract.
Mm-hmm.
For reasons just like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or 6 months, we got a 6-month lawyer contract.
Well, whatever they're willing to do, you know.
Well, didn't Lau offer an HR person?
No, I don't think that ended up.
They have HR in their descriptions, but it's just minimal. It's more over the payroll side of stuff and part of the AOD, which is our onboarding and that stuff. It's not in-depth like the county needs.
I mean, they couldn't help suggest people from out of way from here to come in to do it or nothing?
I doubt that they would suggest it because it's one of the parts that they offer as part of their company. So, I mean, we can ask around again. I think we'll know a lot more after Friday in the direction we're wanting to go, with the direction of the attorney and a couple of individuals that are expert in those areas. It's the most we can do.
So is there any more in the commissioner review requests other than what we've covered? All right.
The only other thing,
Oh,
the only other thing I have is the capital improvement plan, and I know that you've had a lot on your plate, and that's on your list. I just want to make sure we mention that we do want to have some kind of an ordinance drafted at some point that we can have on file so we're compliant with everything and eliminating any questions that may exist. So, thank you for working on that.
all right, salary ordinance confirmation summaries.
Make a motion that we grant the chair to sign those confirmation summaries.
Motion made by Nick, is there a second?
I second it.
Second by Steve. All those in favor? Motion carried. All right, we have, let's see, Peterbilt, I need to mention that. We need to make an appointment, is that correct?
You need to, I put it in your packets, you just need to reaffirm the two that are there. The state has changed their levels of years of service and they're staggering them. The two individuals, Bill Purcell and Matt Lance, are willing to still stay on, and they were the council's original appointments.
So you need a motion on these? Make a motion then that we present, or we grant to Dusty White, our assessor, these individuals that he has mentioned here for the, is it the Peterbilt Board?
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be for the year 25.
Motion made by Nick, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Joe. All those in favor? Motion carried. We have an individual here that, his information came a little bit later, so we need to make a motion to add him to our agenda. Marcy, do you want to enter?
Yes, so, this is a member of the chamber, his name is Drew Heckman. And Drew helps out with the probation department, and he also proposed a plan to the town last year. And so after going through that with the town, he is would like to present it to the council tonight.
So I'll make a motion that we add it to the agenda
Okay.
for consideration.
Motion made by Anton, is there a second? Second by Daniel. All those in favor? Motion carried.
Brought up PowerPoint, I don't know. Is there somebody here?
Here. They have copies.
We've got copies.
I've got a copy, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll try not to take too long. So this is,
Turn on your microphone there, Drew, just to make sure that it picks you up there, hit that button.
So we're following up on a program that we started with the city. So the idea was to provide mental health services to our first responders. So I was just going to come introduce myself. Some of you I've known. I think I rode your bus since I was a kid, but you probably don't know like kind of the things I've done since I left Spencer and came back. So I'm going to just give a little introduction myself, kind of give a proposal of what I was thinking about doing. Really, it's kind of something we've already started with the city, so it's just kind of bringing it over to the county and then go from there. So So what I did, I went and got my PhD at Indiana University in psychology, and I've been practicing as a clinical psychologist for about the past 14 years or so. I worked at a residential facility in Omaha, Nebraska called Boys Town for the past 9 years, and then I moved back here and I managed the outpatient clinic at IU Health for a couple years. I left that position and came and started a small private practice here in Spencer. 2 days a week, I work with the Owen County Probation Department, so I provide therapy, clinical services to people on probation, and then the rest of the time I have a small private practice here in town. I have worked with 4-year-olds up to 84-year-olds. So I've done a lot and kind of covered the lifespan. I work with internalizing disorders, so anxiety, depression, so those are the things that we struggle with internally, and externalizing stuff, so those are the kids that spit, kick, punch, cuss, all that stuff too. So I do kind of the gamut of things that come into mental health services. I've been trained in several evidence-based models, so research-based practice, like family therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. What's really important for this proposal is working with first responders, as I've got a lot of training in trauma-based therapy. So EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing is kind of like the big word that you hear in the trauma treatment, or trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. Both of those I've been trained in and I use as well. So the idea is to start providing services for first responders in the county. As you know, first responders are at a high risk of mental health issues, increased risk for binge drinking, increased risk for trauma particularly, increased risk for depression, anxiety. But then also being a first responder has a set of values and cultures to it. Like, you don't say when you're hurt, you don't want to get pulled. There's a big reliance or big value of self-reliance. So the idea here is to collaborate with the county and provide services in a way that we can take insurance out of the picture. So we don't have to have a diagnosis. We don't have to have a label or anything like that. We can provide good mental health services at a very cheap cost for the first responders. So what we started doing with the city, so basically we would be mimicking that. So what we do with the city is we have a grant that covers the first session. So when you look at my cost, the first session is usually the most expensive because I do a full diagnostic interview, going everything from what you're like as a baby to what's going on today. So we have a grant through the Owen County Community Foundation that covers that first session, build that, but then follow-up sessions. So what we'd like to do is kind of treat it like an EAP style. So provide up to 6 sessions. I give a discounted rate for first responders, and the first responder is responsible for $40 to pay for 6 sessions. And the way we do it with the city is I bill the city for the other $100. And so we're providing services where they don't have to get insurance, they don't have to have a diagnosis, and they can get in right away with somebody in the community. So that's what we've started with the city. It's going pretty well. I'd say my one criticism is I want more people. I want to work with more first responders, so I'm glad Ryan's here. So I want to get the word out to as many people as I can and see if I can help first responders. So. Questions?
All right, so I think the first place to go is going to be commissioners because of the contractual service and structure that this would provide employees. So that's definitely something you want to engage with them on. And there's one in the back of the room there that you can chat with, Dave. And the other is making sure we talk with the sheriff, 911 dispatchers, EMTs, paramedics, and coroner, for that matter. Any first responder category, I think, would be able to take advantage of something like this. The cost. So I know it's a little fluid because we don't know numbers.
Yeah.
But if you can go back over that, your total cost is $140, right?
Yeah. So
Can you break that down?
Yeah,
for us?
sure.
Okay.
So I give a discounted. So the total cost would be $140. $40 goes to the first responder. So there's a little cost commitment from the first responder. And doing clinical services for a while, that's kind of a good thing. There's a little bit of buy-in, and what people tend to do better when they're paying a little bit, And what I tend to do is fairly quick work, you know, if we, 2 or 3 sessions, hopefully whatever it is we're working on is out of the way. And if we go over 6 sessions, what we've decided is then it would go to working with the insurance company from there. So the cost would be $40 to the first responder and then $100 billed to the county.
And that's per session?
Per session, yeah.
Per session,
Yep.
up to 6?
Up to 6, yep.
Okay, so it potentially for the employee, $240 at the end of the day, and for the county, $600. Is that the correct math? 4
Yes,
times
yeah, if
4?
you do all 6 sessions.
Yeah.
And in my.
Up to 6.
In the limited that I've had with the city, we've rarely gone 6 sessions.
Yeah, I just think we need a kind of a final,
Yeah.
formal plan, contract, structure, but I think it does need to be vetted through the commissioners.
Sure.
And then there needs to be a proposal on covering the cost,
Okay.
with some kind of estimate and where that's going to come from, if we're to do that, so.
Sure.
Chris, is that something that, if you guys signed on for it, you would have the funds just out of your budget or something like that?
Yeah, I think through contractual services or something like that, I could find some funds.
One question I would have, I know we've had emails back and forth about the possibility of AEDs in different departments. Would those people then be considered first responders if they use that AED? Because they're working in the capacity as a first responder. And then would the county be paying for that? Or what are we going to put as a definition for first responder?
I think, if your job description is that you're a first responder, that's,
Well, you got sheriff's department, you EMS, but if somebody's using an AED in the prosecutor's office, they're then acting in the capacity as a first responder and could suffer the same trauma that an EMT could. So we may have to have some kind of definition as to what we're using as a
I think
first
during
responder.
emergency services, that would be your first responders. Yeah, and then, if somebody upstairs uses an AED, we would definitely find help for them.
I'd give them my first responder discount, but I may not bill it to you guys, that's what I usually do. If somebody tells me they work in an emergency department, okay, you get my first responder discount, but that's kind of the way I've been doing it, but.
It's going to be an exception for that situation,
Sure.
I think,
Yeah.
and it could happen to anyone.
Yeah.
And that's a good point, because you could, depending on the situation, it could really affect someone that provided the assistance.
Yep.
But I don't think for purposes of county government that we would be covering that necessarily. I don't know. It just depends on the situation, but.
Which might be something we need to have a definition
Yeah.
of.
Something to think about the contract and how that is worked out.
Any other questions? I think it's a valuable service, and I think mental health is a important part, especially with first responders. So I appreciate you coming and talking.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Sheila, on the ordinance, what,
We had a double fatality.
do we need to, in here?
This is the
Oh,
ordinance
that's
that the
okay.
commissioners approved at their meeting last week to move the funds from the storage unit fund number 4015 to a new fund number 9181 that is called the jail project. That'll be the fund that, as monies are coming in at the end of each year, whatever is collected in the storage unit fees will keep funneling into that. It can also be used to pay any claims or bills that should come along, but I would want all claims to come before the council and approved by the commissioners before it's. So we would need to structure for right now, we're just putting the funds, the extra storage unit funds into a new jail project fund. The commissioners did approve it.
Okay.
Sam has the original that they signed, so if you guys will, if you approve it, you need to sign on an Bjorn.
Do we need to advertise this?
No.
Okay.
Well, yes, because it's funds, so.
I
it
make,
would be-
I make a motion then we adopt the ordinance number 2025-002, and also allow Madam Auditor to advertise it.
Motion been made, is there a second?
I don't have a copy of that.
Oh,
You
Okay.
won't mind, Anton?
Sorry. Was it sent electronically? I didn't get a copy of it, so.
You got a copy?
Yep.
A signature copy.
yes, I do.
Although Daniel didn't get his name on.
You've been left out.
Interesting.
Daniel. Of course, this is just,
Is there a second?
no,
No,
there's,
there's not been a second.
I'll second.
Second by Steve.
So who had made the motion?
Nick.
So again, you're taking all out except for what you need to finish out the year, so that part's covered. The rest is gonna be in a new fund, 9181. It's gonna sit there and it can be used for the jail project. And so any costs that come in, like a survey or an environmental, we could use that fund. Okay, sounds good.
All right. I call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion carried.
I have a, whenever you get to public comments, I have a public comment.
Oh,
Okay. Elected officials and department head comments. Lisa.
I'm sorry, I didn't make it to the agenda, but I have information on the recording system, software and hardware.
You want to come up and talk, please?
Sure.
Thanks.
Oh.
Is this the thing that was expiring?
Yes. So Chief Deputy Miller and I had a meeting with the company, went over lots of different things. They gave us lots of different options to do. The software and the hardware, they say both need updated. They gave us the option of only doing the software now. If we don't do the software, they won't cover the software. They also gave us 3 different options for the technical services agreement. One being for the 5 years, one to pay for all of that at once. One to do the 5 years and then pay it annually. We'd owe nothing now, but then an amount for the next 4 years. And then they gave us the option to do the contract for 1 year. The cheapest and best option at this moment is probably to do the software update and then the 1 year contract, and then we can budget for the hardware update for next year.
Are we in a time crunch on this?
They are being very nice. They've extended it and they're working with us. They know how county government works and it has to go different places. And I know that you guys are in charge of this money. It's gonna have to go to the commissioners to decide which of those maintenance contracts. I just want everybody to have all of the information.
Well, it's a very defined contract, and I know that we have been using these people.
Yes. And we've had no problems with any of the software or hardware or in dealing with them.
So you're thinking the best deal for right now is a 1 year contract, pay them up front for what, repeat what you said.
The cheapest option is to do the software and the 1 year maintenance contract.
And what would that totally cost? Is it right here on this page?
Well, I have to add it, but yes, those 2 amounts are there. $18,239.92
For 1 year.
for 1 year
With the software.
with the software update.
Sometimes we seem like we get trapped. What's the consequences if we don't do anything?
If the hardware system breaks, we just don't have anything recording. They are no longer supporting the software that we have now. So basically, we have nothing to record with.
Yes, ma'am.
Matt?
It's like anything else we have. If this hardware, the actual physical recorder, could last another 10 years, it could. It could also go out tomorrow. It's like any other piece of electronics. So if this was in our old dispatch center in the jail, I would say it probably was replaced 3 years ago because it was infested with dust bunnies. But the new facility's clean, temperature controlled. I'm sure the hardware's fine right now. But it's one of those things that it's at the end of its service life according to the manufacturer. Take that for what you think it's worth, but it's probably something that should be looked at. We should probably be looking at replacing it in the future. The software is a completely different thing. Software crashes all the time. If there's an issue with it, they will not help with it. If the software is not working, the hardware is useless. So the software definitely needs to be handled. Talking with Lisa, there are other vendors. We haven't had a problem with this one, but there are other recording vendors out there that if we had known this contract was going to be expiring and had time, we could have potentially looked at, are there other options out there, anything that's cheaper, anything of that sort, but we just don't have that time right now. We're literally looking at, like Lisa said, they're being pretty good with us on keeping that software running right now, and helping us out that way before we're just cut ties with them and done. Again, it could work perfect for the next 10 years if we handled it, but you have no idea if that's gonna happen. So the thought process was kind of, let's get ourselves into a safe position and then look at budget time, see if we can find the money and budget for it, and that also gives Lisa time in the meantime to potentially look what other vendors are out there. If there's a cost savings associated with switching vendors, can we use the current equipment we have, get new software? There's so many other options you can look at as opposed to just jumping straight into another 5 years right now and doing it all. And again, that's what's saying that WSI's been good, we haven't had any issues. But I think just to kind of make sure you're dotting all your T's and crossing your I's.
Lisa, being a contract, you'll have to take this to the commissioners, and you have?
I'm gonna take it to them next week.
Oh, I don't-
They were also sent out all of this information last week when I got it too, so it won't be anything new to them.
So there's the equipment part, which you just addressed, and it's a one-time upfront expense
For the software, yes.
for the equipment and the software.
Yes, the software and the hardware.
The maintenance part is ongoing, and that's where we get into the 1 year versus 4 years, and quite frankly, I think we should go with the 4 years on that because it's such a cheaper amount overall. So to me, it seems like the whole thing is just gonna be a one-time money request. I mean, if you're paying for the equipment and the software up front, right? And you're gonna do the maintenance for 4 years, there will be no annual for the next 4 years. It's just now.
It's just
And
right
then
now.
you're done. That's the bottom dollar cheapest option, correct?
Overall,
In the long run,
Overall in the long run. And we've got the cash in these funds. So, I mean, I think that's
So
probably
what's
the
the
best
cost
option,
difference, I
right?
mean, between doing what you're proposing versus what Lisa was saying?
if we do the software, the hardware, and the 5-year maintenance agreement, it's $58,978.
versus the 18,000 that were
versus the
something.
18,239. In the long run, it's cheaper, yes.
Because the 18 is times 4.
Or you have to renew
The
the,
18 would include the software update.
Okay, so we want to back that out
Right.
and then do the math times 4.
Yeah.
What is that total coming out to? Just because that's what we're comparing to.
Yeah, I thought it was 11 and some change or something. wasn't it?
This
Yeah,
is,
it's 11,441.92 a year. Times 4 is 45,767,
Okay.
which is just the contract part of it, not including the software and the hardware.
And then the software hardware part is how much then by itself?
27,928.
Right there, yeah. So I mean, you're going to save about 10, at least 10,000, right? Rough math, in doing it up front.
yes.
And we've got the cash to do it in this fund, so,
We haven't had a problem with this company.
So it looks like, right, the total amount's 31,000, right? The total amount's 31,000 if you pay it now. If you
If you-
don't pay it now, you pay years 2, 3, 4, 5 at 11,000 each.
Yes.
And that's everything included in the 31,000, correct?
The 31,000 is just the 5 years of maintenance getting, I thought he said getting that year free. Yes, the maintenance, if you do the 5-year agreement up front, you pay less a year. If you pay it annually, you're gonna pay more because you're gonna pay the 11,000. They want you to sign up for the 5 years.
Right.
So it'll be the 31,000 and then software and hardware, which is another 27,928.
and I'd also believe that after looking around, that number's probably not gonna be much different no matter what. We're gonna look around, and maybe spend the rest of the year doing that, and then we're probably gonna come up with a different company. The prices are gonna be relatively the same, and we're not gonna get away from the system. We're not gonna not have one. So I'm kinda looking, if we have the money, I'm thinking the long term would almost be a better option. And I don't wanna spend any money either, but we're not gonna go away from it. It's not gonna not be used.
If I could just make the decision on my own, I would go with doing the software and the hardware in the 5 years right now. We've had no problems with them, it's a good system, but that's also a huge chunk of money that I'm glad I'm not the one that has to be responsible for making that decision.
It'll be, but next year you'll be here asking for the same thing, and it'll probably be higher.
And, yes,
if you only do
Nothing
the
gets
1 year,
cheaper.
yeah.
Yeah, 1 year it'll be higher, and then the next year it'll be higher, and then the next year it'll be higher.
We value your input, Lisa, but this is a commissioner's call. All we need to do is see what they want to do, and then are we willing to fund it? Because it is a contract that they have to sign. And I don't think we have a problem, whatever they would ask. I think let the attorney look through it and make sure this is what they want.
Matt?
Is there any way to get, to have a vote, if that's what you all decide you want to do, to fund this pending the commissioner's approval? Because they did show some interest in wanting to maybe look at other companies, but again, we were stressing the time frame and the kind of the way this all shook down. That time is gone. We don't have that luxury anymore. It has to happen now, or else we're just, the WSI is gonna say either pay us something or we're done, and then we're looking for another company while, we have no coverage for 911 or radio recorders.
So do they have a healthy balance, Sheila? I mean,
Your cash balances are healthy in both funds, it would do it. If you guys make a motion to approve it pending the commissioner's decision on the amount or the contract, you would also need to make a motion to do an additional appropriation, so I can go ahead and advertise it and it can be approved at your March meeting. She has enough to go ahead and pay it in a couple of her other line items right now until you replenish it in March.
Which fund? Yeah, there you go.
You got 1222 or 1235.
Which one would you suggest?
The one brings in 26,000 and something a month, the other one brings in 42,000 a month, so either
So we could use both of them if we need to. Okay, I make a motion then that we as the council would authorize upon the choice and the decision of what the commissioners make, the funding up to a max, we're talking 58,000, is that what you're talking about?
58,978.
Up to 58,978.
978.
Oh,
58,978.
Okay. And we'll take the funding out of the two line items that Sheila has money in, and you said it was 12 what?
1222, 1235.
Okay. Will both of them together have enough money in it, Sheila? Okay. Okay.
I think you're gonna have to pick one though, because it's a
Yeah.
fund, not a line.
Yeah,
We'll give you.
Which one do we wanna?
we're just,
I would say let's use the 1235 fund, there's $463,000 balance in there.
Okay. Good deal.
do you want to restate your?
What I need to- What fund or she needs to advertise?
He made a motion, whatever choice the decision the commissioners made to pay up to $58,978 from fund number 1235.
There we go.
Sounds good.
There we go.
Second.
Motion made by Nick, seconded by Joe. Any
Now,
questions?
the funny part to this though is that if you're limiting it to 58, then that pretty much tells them what the only choice they've got is doing it all at once. Because if they don't, it has to be a higher amount,
Well, here's the thing.
I guess, but.
If this company's been a good company, and anybody else that would come in under that, it would be less. And if they come in over that, we're not gonna change.
Yeah, and I guess if it is annual, it's technically less, but I'm only supporting it because I would expect we do it all up front, because I wouldn't support it if we don't. So I'm just making that clear on the record. I think the commissioners should go for the full amount.
Well, we have one commissioner here,
But-
so.
I'm all in one.
Yeah,
We can take note back.
If it was just me, I'd say yes. I'm all in one.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it.
yep.
Any other questions on this? All right, all those in favor? Motion carried.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Any other elected officials or department head comments? Public comment. Aaron?
But one of the things that's been kicked around in a lot of these meetings over the years was this idea of contractual agreement with employees on special services. That'd be like deputies or EMTs or somebody that, you know, that we train, you know, 911 or whatever. That when they actually become an employee here, there's a contract saying that, you know, they have to stay with us at least for a couple of years, so we get some of our money back as far as the training goes. It's happened too many times in the past that I've heard complaints about, where people say, yeah, we trained so-and-so, and then as soon as they got their training done, they went to Bloomington and made, you know, $8,000 more a year, or whatever. But I'm just giving an example. I think what we need to do, from a public standpoint, for budgeting purposes, is to say, on some of these different positions that are crucial to the people in Walden County, we need to have a contract written, okay, right, for whatever dollar amount you guys decide, that's good for so many years that they stay here and work. That's what I want to do.
Matt, did you have
We
something?
do that.
That's what I thought.
We have a current contract with all of our new deputies for 2 years after their completion of the academy. So that actually for a brand new person equals 3 years.
But do you pay for the academy?
Partially, yeah.
Because there's a Department of Labor rule against that, but guess what you're exactly asking? I can't remember how that works, but you're not technically allowed to do that.
So-
But there's some things if you pay, and there's some ways around it. But
So in talking with our legal counsel, I know Indiana State Police does a contract as well, requiring they be reimbursed for equipment, training, whatever else that comes with it. It has, to the best of my knowledge, and according to their legal staff as well, has not been contested in court. And according to our attorney, it's the same thing, that it may or may not be enforceable, so.
Yeah.
We do it, but if it came down to it, we wanted to pursue that, we would be figuring out whether that would be
Yeah.
something that can be enforced or not, but we currently do that now with our new deputies.
Any other public comments? Yes,
Do you want to come up there?
sure, yeah.
Hi, my name is Grayson Arthur. I've lived in Owen County my whole life. This is in regards of things that were brought up in the commissioner committee, but I feel like it can be said here as well. I just want to take a moment to address something that is deeply important, not just for some, but for all of us in this community. We live in a place that prides itself on kindness, fairness, and neighborly support. But when I hear talk of banning certain groups of people who are our neighbors from public spaces, I'm both saddened and alarmed. Public spaces belong to everybody. When it comes down to it, it's discrimination, it's profiling, and it's not okay. The LGBTQ+ community is not some abstract group of others. They are family, our friends, and members of this very community. Banning or excluding them doesn't erase them, it only creates division, pain, and harm. And it's not just about them. When we start pushing people out of spaces because of who they are, it sets a dangerous precedent. Here's the truth. People just want to feel safe, safe to walk in public, safe to be themselves, safe to exist without fear of judgment or exclusion. And when we let hate and bigotry win, and the fear or ignorance, it's not the people who's spewing the hate who suffer, it is the individuals they are targeting. And this isn't a political issue, this is a human issue. Being understanding, open, and empathetic is what makes us strong. It's what binds us together, and it's what makes our community great. And if we allow hate to divide us, we all lose. As Stephen Hawking once said, the greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance, it is the illusion of knowledge. Holding on to old stereotypes and outdated beliefs only serves to hurt others and drag us backward. The world is moving forward, and it's time we do too. A lot of people are uncomfortable with the LGBT+ community and the drag story hours. Your discomfort doesn't justify taking away someone else's sense of safety and belonging. And when I say your, I mean us as the community. I want us to be a community where every person feels safe, valid, and treated like a human being. Discrimination and exclusion has no place here. Let's choose love, inclusion, and empathy, and let's move forward together.
Could you give me your name again?
Grayson Arthur.
Grayson.
Grayson.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're
Grayson.
fine.
Is there some examples that you would be at liberty to share?
I was watching the commissioner meeting on YouTube, and Brett Levy came on here, and he wanted to exclude members of, especially the trans community, from the public library, and I quote, like, from him, public spaces. And it just did not sit right with me.
Well, are not all those places paid for by taxpayers?
They are, and that's what kind of rubbed me wrong, that he wants to exclude people that pay taxes and deserve to be in those public areas.
I think if you go back and read it, his very specific thing is to remove the drag show hour from the publicly paid library. I don't think he said move them out of public places. So, I watched it a couple of times.
Yeah,
So,
same. But yeah.
but, you know, that is a issue that is brought up nationally now, and here we are.
You are
And
correct.
your right and his right are together in the same.
They are.
Thanks for coming and speaking.
Thank you guys for letting me come in.
Yeah, and I'll just add for a technical clarification, the library is not a county government facility anyway. So as far as commissioners even having authority over that, or us, of course, none, it would have to be taken up with the library as far as that issue, just to make sure we're not in something that doesn't really involve county government. Just, but thank you, yeah.
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Maybe.
Well, yeah, depending on what the legislature does, but for now, no.
Yeah, that may become part of the county government.
All right, thank you guys. Do I need to turn this off?
Yes, if there's no more, is there any other public comment? Yeah, turn that off, please, thank you. Sheila?
For council, we had Polly an email from Natasha earlier. She had indicated that she needs an appointment to the JRAC Council, which is Justice Reinvestment Advisory Council, and the Community Corrections Advisory Board, because I believe Amy may have been in that role.
Yes.
Yeah, so whoever the council gets an appointment on those two boards, they meet typically quarterly for an hour or so. They're not too terribly involved, but they are important. Their next meeting is March 17th. So I think we probably should have someone serve in that capacity. Joe? If he's willing to. It doesn't have to be Joe, sorry, I'm just saying Joe. So.
Would you be willing to take it, Joe?
I had served on it in the past, it's limited time, Joe, it's not too terribly involved, but it is important to be a seat at the table from a council standpoint,
I
so.
make a motion that we put Joe in that position if he
Let's get railroaded, all right. Is there anybody else that would like that spot?
I'm out of town.
Got a motion, is there a second? Is there a second?
Can we get a second? Second.
Second by Daniel. All those in favor? Motion carried. Congratulations, Joe.
I have a council comment.
Yes.
And I want to ask our county commissioner, Jay, I had a person ask me the other day where they get a building permit. Is the building permit, is the office open?
Sheila.
Are you
Poor Sheila.
selling permits?
We're trying to keep up with the phone calls and processing them, and John is doing a lot of the technical conversations with people and doing the scheduling for actual inspections and working with Josh Hogan, who is the.
So we have an inspector, Josh, okay. Okay, so is it
Come to our
89,500? Do they call your office then? Okay. Well, they said, where did they get, and I didn't know, they led me to believe they came down and the office was closed, so.
It is closed.
Yeah, it is. There's nobody in that office at this time.
Okay.
So.
It's a wild goose chase right now.
Well, we need to be very careful. We have people out in Indianapolis come down and they're wanting to build and, I don't know. And I appreciate you taking it over, Sheila.
They, again, the guards have been good in sending them down. The calls are forwarded actually to John's phone directly, so we're trying to keep up with everything. But I don't want to do it more or any longer than we have to. Again, figure if we can get this advertised in the next day or two and somebody has to turn in a 2-week notice, we're probably looking at a month before we have somebody in there and at the start of the building season. So we've got to move forward as quick as possible, but I'll keep up as best as I can. That doesn't mean that we're going to get everybody every day, because we're busy too.
Thank you. But at least I know where to send them now.
Can I add to that too? That's putting the BCA and planning behind, because she was running those.
Yeah. Yeah, because when they have a meeting, then they have no secretary. So.
Well, this is the third time we put it behind though, right?
Yeah. Council have anything else?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Official meeting. Congratulations.